Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. So, I've just been hearing a lot of talk lately on the grapevine regarding Stormcast Eternals, and in addition to a lot of talk about the new edition that could be coming up. So, I just want to go over some of the points I've been hearing about change-ups to the Stormcast line and just my overall thoughts on what this all could mean. So, as for change-ups here, I've generally seen that, well, it's pretty much, well, I wouldn't really say confirmed, but it's very heavily implied that we're going to be getting a new edition of Age of Sigmar in the near future, probably sometime next year. And as with all things, when a new edition comes, the new flagship faction always gets updated as well. For Age of Sigmar, it's Stormcast Eternals. For 40k, it's the Space Marines, etc. So by this, we could pretty much almost guarantee there's going to be another update to Stormcast Eternals. Which generally means we're going to be getting new models. However, from what we've kind of been seeing lately, I do also believe we're going to be also seeing a pruning of the Stormcast range coming up, similar to what we've seen more recently with Space Marines in 40k. In that, we're probably like at this point, there's the Stormcast range is getting to the point where I don't think it's feasible for them to just keep every single model in circulation going forward. Like we're already at what, like 70 something, or at least high 60s in terms of War Scrolls. It's the same problem we had with Space Marines. You've got redundancies on top of redundancies. Something's got to give. So we're very likely going to be seeing some of the older, probably first edition releases get probably discontinued, and more, well, maybe not discontinued is the wrong word, but updated. And we'll get to that in a minute. And also, there's definitely been some hints in supplementary material for Games Workshop that hints on in which directions these are probably going. In that, updates are probably what we're going to be seeing more than just pruning. So one of the big things people are talking about right now is Ionis Cryptborn. Now, for those of you who probably might not know, he was actually an original character from the first edition of Age of Sigmar. He was a big player in the initial box set release. I believe the initial Stormcast Eternal Priest, I think the Relictor, he was basically served as double duty. Technically, he was a character, but then his model just became a generic character. As for him, he kind of just disappeared from the narrative for like a whole edition, but now he's back with an updated model. And this is basically one of the big clues that people are pointing to, in that it's basically proves that GW is not just re-releasing older models. They are taking first edition concepts and characters and giving them model updates. So yeah, this is a completely new design for him that incorporates, I would probably describe as the more aesthetic design for the new Stormcast Eternals. A lot more busier models, a lot more use of colorings, much more integration of more modern Age of Sigmar concepts. For example, like the Draconeth, for example. Rather than the more simplistic designs the Stormcast Eternals had earlier, which they were basically just big guys in golden armor. The fact that this is a true update rather than a re-release really points to the fact is that GW is finally reaching the point where they're going to be updating the older model lines. Like, for example, with this guy being released, and the fact that the Stormcast Eternals already have several priests leads me to believe that older Ionis model that they released for first edition might just get discontinued, because, to be perfectly honest, I don't even really know where to find it right now. The only place I really know it's on the store is you have to buy. It comes in like a box set, but that's pretty much the only place you can find it. And on top of that, it hasn't really gotten huge rules updates for like 2 editions, except for now. Now he's got it. So this is what, and a lot of people are also pointing out, could be a very big trend with a lot of the older characters. Like, for example, like Vanda's Hammerhand. Like, he was the Stormcast Eternal hero for like like pretty much the initial launch, and then he just did nothing for like 2 whole editions. Like he basically did nothing during the Soul Wars, and then he did nothing for most of Era of the Beast, and now he just all of a sudden just shows up now and looks like he's back in action. In addition, it looks like Korgus Call. For those of you who don't know, the Blades of Corn hero, he's back in the narrative too after basically doing nothing since first edition. And a lot of people are hinting that when 4th edition comes, all these models will, including Korgus Call, will all get model updates. Like maybe he'll become a Demon Prince. Maybe Vandus Hammerhand will cross the Rubicon Thunderstrike and get new armor. Like this is like basically Ionis Cryptborn has basically given those theorists probably their biggest confirmation. So okay, so if Ionis Cryptborn was probably the first volley, well this was also probably the follow-up retaliation in terms of what people were in terms of people theorizing that Stormcast are getting an update. Now, this isn't technically a model confirmation, but it's pretty much a confirmation in all but name. So if you don't know, the new RTS that's coming out, Realms of Ruin, it's an official GW game system, and apparently quite recently, one of the skins for the Liberators for the game has an option to upgrade it to well, not upgrade it, but change it to a Thunderstrike pattern for Liberators. So you have the option of having them be the older style Liberators design, but also a more updated Thunderstrike design. So probably I think what happened right here is that when they were designing the game initially, that only the original Liberator design was available, but I think what happened was as the game neared completion, they were made aware that new Thunderstrike Liberator models were being created, and they want the models to match what's in the game. So what I think what they did was they just kind of quickly made a change to include it. So now you can do both. But that's not really what I'm trying to make here. The thing that people are talking about is that the fact that these designs are coming out in an official GW game that's trying to mimic the models supremely heavily implies that we're probably going to see updated Liberators in the new edition when it comes out. Now, this personally does not surprise me at all. Like, Liberators have always been, well, I guess more or less they had to be iconic units for Stormcast. Like, they were the first battle line that came out. They were the first Stormcast that were ever on, like, a piece of media. Like, I think it was, like, the first edition, like, a Stormcast book. They're just such an iconic unit, and I just feel they really got shafted as time went on, because with each new edition they wanted to show newer stuff. So in the Soul Wars edition 2 of Age of Sigmar, it was the Sequitors. They pretty much became the face of the franchise, and then Era of the Beast came up, and then we had like oh my goodness, what is the name of those things again? The spear guys. Well, I can't remember off the top of my head, but they pretty much took the place of the battle line option, because they were basically just Liberators, but Vindictors, that's the name. Sorry, I can't believe I forgot that. Yeah, so first Sequitors took their place as the better battle line, then Sequitors took their place as the better battle line. And well, I'm not even going to talk about, Vanguard, like any of the Vanguard chamber, because no one ever really played them, but I think they were supposed to take their place as well, like the Vanguard Hunters, but whatever. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling. What I'm trying to say is that they basically they were kept around, but they just kept on getting relegated to the less powerful battle line, and then like Vindictors just straight up replaced them because they were just better in every way. Now, however, I feel like they're not going to leave Liberators out on the whim too much. What I feel what they're going to do is, this is the first indication that we're going to be seeing models phased out. I feel in the new edition they are going to probably phase out the older Liberator models, like the big bulky ones we got in the first edition, and replace them with these guys, the more streamlined Thunderstrike armor variant with different shielding. And personally, I think that would make perfect sense. There's no real reason to phase out Liberators because they're too iconic, but they do need to be updated because at this point right here, it's probably pretty obvious they're probably not moving too many Liberator models anymore. I think they just, it's the same problem with like, tactical Marines in 40K. They just, everyone and their grandmother probably already had them. They need new models to justify the unit going forward. Now speaking of 40K, I just want to touch on them real quick. In that this is just basically to show that this kind of a change up that I've been describing is not unprecedented. As anyone who probably knows, and you have to basically be sitting under a rock to have not noticed it. There was a similar thing that happened in 40K some years ago in the change up between the 7th and 8th editions, where GW started introducing updates to older models. Like, for example, case in point, the Space Marines got a mass model update with new additions of Primaris lines, which were basically designed as newer, more modern versions of older Space Marines. One thing that I don't think is going to happen with Stormcast that did happen to Space Marines, it's that when they added these new models, they didn't phase out the older models right away. Like, for example, you had Intercessors, at the same time as Tactical Marines. You had Assault Intercessors at the same time as Assault Marines. And you had, basically Primaris equivalents that were pretty much obviously intended to replace the older models existing alongside them. Now, this was nice for some people, as in that their models they already had were still usable. However, it did mean that the Space Marine range became, which by the way was already massively overbloated, became just even more engorged with more units. I think by the end of the range there, I think Space Marine had over 70 different units that were in the book. It was insane, and I think that had to do with the fact is GW was afraid of phasing out some models that they felt too many people had. For example, you imagine if they just started at 8th edition and they just came out and said, okay, your Tactical Marines are no longer supported. You can't use them officially. You have to buy Intercessors. You would have people basically just they'd be burning their armies in mass. There'd be mass boycotts. It's just, well, I don't know if there'd be mass, but you'd have some very upset people because just too many people had them. You'd be, outdating too many armies. And it's only actually until recently, this edition, that they finally started phasing out older kits. Not just equivalents, but even just obviously models that just aren't being used much. Some certain, for example, the Thunderstrike cannon for the Space Marines and some of their artillery. Just stuff that didn't even have direct Primaris equivalents. It's just they're finally calling the branch. And I feel like what I'm trying to get at is what they're doing now with Space Marines is what they're probably going to do with Stormcast Eternals. The range is getting too big. We're very likely getting equivalents of updated models of older units. So they're probably going to start phasing out some models that have direct updates, but also I think phasing out some models that just quite frankly aren't being used. Because case in point, I think Stormcast have over 30 hero options, and some of them are literally competing against 2 or 3 others. I think so. For example, Stormcast Eternals have 3 or 4 different wizards, at least 3 different priests, 4 or 5 different generic fighty heroes. They're all just tripping over themselves and doing basically the same thing. It's why you don't see so many different models. There's just too much redundancy. So I think GW is either going to phase them out, update them, or consolidate them. One thing I've seen one people suggest is, for example, just consolidate the knights into just one unit, just with different models to represent them. Instead of having 5 different war scrolls, just have one war scroll for a knight, and you can just use whatever model you want. Something like that is probably going to happen because there's no way they're going to let the range bloat too much more than it already is. So, having said all that, what are some of the pros of this? Well, some of the pros will be updated kits. A lot of kits, especially for Stormcast Eternals, are getting a little old. There's no getting around that. Like, especially in comparison to some of the newer stuff, like some of the older stuff looks looks slightly dated. Well, not, I guess dated's not the right word, but it's not really keeping with the current style. Like, they're trying to go more like streamlined and more like aesthetic with Stormcast. Instead of the old ones where basically they were blocky, they were big, they were just big guys in armor. Like, I think that's not really the design they want to go with so much going forward. And also in terms of this, like, obviously they'll probably also be newer models, not just updates. So that means we'll get newer play styles, newer models. Every time there's a mass update of an army, especially like with flagship ones like Stormcast and Space Marines, it always brings new units and new rules to play it. So it definitely can change up an army that can often get somewhat stagnated from the fact that it generally only gets updated at the beginning of an edition. And also, let's be perfectly honest here, too. Generally speaking, whenever a book is first released, they generally try to give it the best rules and support, at least for a while anyway. Like, when Stormcast first came out, they were the big thing. They got the good rules. They got all the newer stuff. And they also got the best support in that there was lots of articles about them, lots of model updates, lots of deals going on. That's probably a good thing that's going to happen for Stormcast. Because, ironically, they haven't, until quite recently, they haven't gotten a lot of support lately this edition. Like, besides the initial releases at the beginning of Warhammer 3rd edition, they haven't really seen too much stuff. Like, at least not until recently. And I think it would be nice to actually see them get some updates. And honestly, I feel that the newer models are a definite improvement over the older models, definitely. Like, I think objectively, from what we've been seeing with the new Liberators, I think they objectively look better. I just feel like the old models, they weren't bad, but I just feel like they were a little too I think they were just a little bit too simplistic for me, because they're just two blocks of like metal. There wasn't as much character in them. Now I know there's some pros and cons to that, but that's a personal stance for me. Yeah, and I think more than anything too, I think Stormcast just really needs some love in a meta sense, because as I've just said a couple times already, they've kind of definitely been neglected because they haven't really gotten a lot of attention. At least not since the beginning of the edition. They've definitely fallen in the ranks. They could use a power boost. Now, as for downsides, obviously we're probably going to see some squatting of some models. Case in point here, I'm pretty confident Liberators are probably not long for this world. At least not the original Liberators. Now maybe they might keep both around, as similar to what we did with like Intercessors and Tactical Marines. Like, you could use whichever one you want. But I don't know. Something about this kind of tells me I don't think they're gonna do that, because they're like. The situation between the Liberator update and Intercessors and Tactical Marines is a little bit different, in that these new Liberators are basically designed to be treated as the exact same unit, just with updated models, and I just can't really see them keeping the older models around, at least not long term. Which means that that means this will inevitably mean not everyone will be on board with this, because if the Liberators do go, what else will be going? Like, we'll probably lose some of the priests. We might even see some updates to like the Lord Celestins. And that means every update that has that means a person who owns that model can't use it officially. Which means if you want to do anything official with it, you have to get the updated model. So obviously there's probably going to be grumbling. Well, oh great, now I have to rebuy my entire army again because I have 3 squads of Liberators. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously you could still always use them in casual games, but there is a certain thing to be said about having official models in use. Like, I will like, and I get where people come from in that regard too. So I see both sides of the argument. And also, I will admit too, yeah, you can't expect a model to stay in circulation forever. Eventually, it's going to be updated. Like, we weren't going to keep using, the old Empire models for Cities of Sigmar forever. We weren't going to be able to use like the old Land Raiders, that were still being made in like the 80s forever. Eventually a model has to get updated or just be discontinued. And I also know that as much as I say I might prefer the newer versions of the stuff being released, you know, the Thunderstrike armor Stormcast, I know a lot of people also like the old stuff, and they're probably gonna miss it. Again, it's just one of those situations where you can't quite please everyone, because doing the opposite of what someone doesn't like will basically just make someone else unhappy. So it is what it is, unfortunately. So my thoughts on the matter, I think it's pretty much all but outright confirmed that Stormcast are probably going to be getting some updates in the new edition. Probably more than models will probably be released as the new edition approaches, and probably some models will get discontinued. I just don't see how. Excuse me. I just don't see how they're not going to be able to not do that. In that there's just they can't like Stormcast is just too big in and of itself right now. It can't continue on like this and keep getting like 13 new kits in every new edition. It needs, like, they're gonna have to start calling stuff, because again, I'm not even sure if some of these models are even still being made anymore. Like, you know, like, I don't know, like the Night Quester, for instance. Like, where do you even, like, is that on the web store? I haven't checked in so long, but I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't. Like, there's just too many, especially heroes. There's just too many units. They gotta pull Roar Scrolls. It's just the name. It's just the nature of the game. Now, if as for the potential updates, I actually do like where they're going with some of this new stuff. It's looking really good. I think they've definitely got some potential with the designs, and I'm really excited to where they go with the Stormcast range in the upcoming 4th edition. Which again, it's probably coming next year. Like, no one knows for sure, but it's pretty much heavily implied it's coming next edition, with the Dawnbringer books being the gap between the old and the new. So yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed what I had to say, and I hope you're excited as I am for what the future holds for the Stormcast and Age of Sigmar. Anyway, have a nice day.